But they're still not perfect. Set over the course of several years during the 18th century, this swashbuckler epic series has fallen victim to a number of historical inaccuracies, though they pale in comparison to the many rookie mistakes made on the set and in the editing room, from glaring errors in continuity to makeup mishaps and green screen nightmares. Here are the biggest mistakes lurking in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Jack's escape. In The Curse of the Black Pearl, when Captain Jack Sparrow is repaid for saving Elizabeth's life with arrest, the captain engineers the first of what would become many improbable escapes over the course of the franchise. After putting a pistol to the head of Miss Swan and ordering her to unshackle him, Sparrow grabs a rope and releases the cannon at the other end, flying into a spin and eventually to freedom. Before departing, he tells Commodore Norrington,
"Gentlemen, my lady, you will always remember this as the day that you almost caught Captain Jack Sparrow."
In reality, we would remember it as the day his men time-traveled into the future to upgrade their weapons. The English gunmen fire at will, each popping off shot after shot, though rifles at the time would have needed reloading after every bullet. Repeating rifles like these didn't come into use until 1862, when they were used by Union soldiers during the American Civil War. Still, this movie does have pirate zombies, so maybe time travel isn't totally out of the question? Elven tattoo. In another Black Pearl blunder, all-round do-gooder Will Turner engages in an acrobatic duel that utilizes all the machinery in the blacksmith shop to stop Sparrow from escaping. When he leans over to taunt Jack, he exposes a rather unusual tattoo for 1700s Port Royal. On his forearm in black ink is the word 9 in J.R.R. Tolkien's Elvish Tengwa script, a piece he and a number of his castmates had done to commemorate their time working together on The Lord of the Rings. Orlando Bloom took to Instagram to share an old photo of the gang showing off their matching tats the day they got them done. That's all well and good for Orlando Bloom, super cool actor guy, but Will Turner seems like too much of a square to get a tattoo, even for something as nerdy as Lord of the Rings. Maybe they should have covered that thing with some makeup. The Lonely Cowboy. The sheer number of people needed to bring a big budget franchise film to life means it can get a little crowded sometimes, even on the largest of sets. Separating the extras from the many crew members needed to turn a ship into a working film set clearly proved to be too much of a challenge here. There's a lot of movement on deck when Jack Sparrow finally returns to the helm of his beloved ship, and the final cut of The Curse of the Black Pearl relies on this to keep you blind from the obvious error in the scene. For just a single frame, a man dressed in a modern white t-shirt and tan cowboy hat can be seen over Captain Jack's shoulder, staring longingly out to sea as the film goes on around him. He probably misses his horse.
And if I had a boat, I'd go out on the ocean. And if I had a pony, I'd ride him on my boat.
Disappearing fish guts. In Dead Man's Chest, when Will boards the Dutchman in search of his father, his rescue mission fails to go as planned. Cursed mutineer Bootstrap Bill Turner is bound to Davy Jones as a member of his immortal crew, having agreed to serve 100 years aboard his ship, and the supernatural tyrant has no intention of breaking that contract. Will is set upon by Jones' gruesome crew, slicing one of his attackers open as he advances and spilling fishy guts all over the deck. When the young Turner is knocked down seconds later, however, all those guts have pretty much vanished. This is either an obvious continuity error or producers making sure that Orlando Bloom's highly marketable face wouldn't be covered in rotten intestines even for a brief moment. Tortuga Concertina. The Tortuga bar fight is pretty much everything you could want out of drunken pirates punching each other. It begins with the disheveled James Norrington applying to serve under the very pirate he once chased halfway across the world, and it ends with the shamed Commodore getting a bottle smashed over his head. The music playing over the all-out brawl that takes place in between those two events comes from a concertina, one of the most piratey sounding instruments there is. Have a listen. Even though that tune really fits the scene well, its inclusion is pretty factually inaccurate. The concertina, a cousin of the accordion, wasn't actually invented until the next century, around 1830. Still, there's never really a bad time for a solid concertina jam. The Big Wheel. The most memorable Dead Man's Chest scene might be the Big Wheel Run, in which a sword fight between Norrington and Turner ends up becoming a whole new Disney park ride in the making. Jack Sparrow also finds himself caught up in the wheel as it rolls downhill towards the ocean, though he's thrown out again before long, knocked out by a metal bar that, from all other angles, looks to be a good foot above the captain's head. That isn't the biggest mistake in the scene, however. When the wheel finally slows to a stop, it falls to the left, with the axle pointing down. When Norrington and Turner emerge, the wheel is somehow the other way up, with the axle pointing skyward. The self-repairing ship. Davy Jones' ferry to the afterlife, the Flying Dutchman, is the most formidable ship to have appeared in the franchise thus far, rising from the deep and making matchsticks out of the Navy and pirate vessels alike. As Jones bears down on Jack Sparrow's Black Pearl in pursuit of his stolen heart, he orders his crew,
"Send his beloved Pearl back to the depths."
And they get to work on sinking the Pearl. The windows of the captain's quarters and the wood framing them is blown to pieces by the Dutchman's cannons, though Sparrow's ship seems to have some otherworldly qualities of its own. Either that, or it's just a really bad edit. Moments later, viewing the Pearl from the port side of the Dutchman, we see that its back end has magically repaired itself.
Maybe somebody came in here and fixed it, or something.
Someone like an angel?
Jack's rings. You know how it was weird that Will Turner had a Lord of the Rings tattoo? Maybe it does make sense when you consider that Jack Sparrow has magic rings of his own. The captain is left alone as the mythical Kraken wraps its giant tentacles around his pride and joy, all while he's chained to the mast of his doomed ship. However, to the surprise of absolutely nobody, Jack manages to escape using lamp oil to wriggle his hand free of his manacle. As he does, the rings on his index and ring fingers come loose and are just about to pop right off until Jack whips his hand free, with the same ring somehow still in place. The Fountain of Youth. As At World's End draws to a close, Jack discovers that his old nemesis, Barbossa, has once again taken the Pearl, though he's able to continue his search for the Fountain of Youth without it. As Sparrow sets out from Tortuga on his dinghy, we see him consulting a scroll that details the discovery of Aqua de Vida by someone named Ponce de Leon in 1523. History buffs know this refers to an actual Spanish explorer and conquistador who, according to legend, set sail in search of the mythical fountain. The trouble is, this voyage actually took place in the year 1513, not 1523, as Jack's map states. So close. Tire tracks. The fourth installment in the franchise, 2011's On Stranger Tides, begins with Jack making a failed attempt to free his first mate, Joshua Gibbs, who's being held in London on charges of piracy. Captured, Sparrow is brought before King George II, who asks him to join his expedition to find the Fountain of Youth. He of course refuses and, as always, makes an unconventional escape. As the hunt for Sparrow moves into the streets of the British capital, which is filled with skinny-wheeled buggies pulled by horses, tire tracks made by a modern car or truck are visible in the mud as clear as day. The Shrinking Imposter. Jack soon finds out that an imposter has been attempting to put together a crew to lead an expedition to find the fountain under his name. When Sparrow comes face to face with said imposter, the pair become involved in a sword fight that keeps the identity of the captain's foe hidden until the very last moment. The fake Jack turns out to be Angelica, his former lover and the daughter of infamous pirate Captain Blackbeard, who also happens to be seeking the mythical fountain. The problem with this scene is the height difference between Penelope Cruz and whoever stood in for her during the battle, as this person was clearly the same height, if not a little taller, than Johnny Depp. Meanwhile, Cruz is clearly a few inches shorter than Depp, even in heels. Half-cocked Blackbeard. Sparrow has various run-ins with Blackbeard over the course of On Stranger Tides as the pair go head-to-head in a battle of savvy. Shanghaied into service aboard his vessel the Queen Anne's Revenge, Jack fails in an attempted mutiny and sees firsthand the power of Blackbeard's legendary Sword of Triton, a magic blade that allows the wielder to control every rope and pulley on the ship.
You dare face this sword?
But his closest shave with Blackbeard comes on land when Jack finds himself with his back to a cliff and a gun to his face. A closer look reveals that Sparrow isn't actually in that much danger at all, seeing as Blackbeard has his pistol half cocked and it wouldn't fire no matter how hard he squeezed the trigger. Barbossa's lieutenant commander. The reveal that Barbossa was alive and well, minus one leg, perhaps wasn't unexpected, nor was the fact that the Black Pearl had been lost under his command, seeing as he seems to lose control of the ship as often as Jack does. The bigger surprise was that Captain Barbossa was now in the employ of the Crown, though either the former pirate isn't up to scratch with his Navy lingo, or the writers made a few historical errors. Barbossa addresses one of his men as Lieutenant Commander, a rank that was not introduced into the Royal Navy until 1914. Also, his ship flies a version of the Union Jack flag that didn't exist at the time, as the Kingdom of Ireland had yet to be absorbed. Magic feathers. Poor Geoffrey Rush was done yet another disservice later in the movie, this time by the editing department. With his ridiculous wig left back on land, he sheds the rest of his British naval garb after admitting to Jack that his true goal was to exact revenge on